What is the most memorable moment you shared with a stranger who you never saw again? I was about 10 years old, and I had a pair of heels and they were the coolest fucking thing on the earth. I would roll all over on those things, and thought I was hot shit. We were in China, spending a few weeks in Beijing. I was rolling around in Tiananmen Square, hit a crack and lost one of the wheels. I looked around for about an hour, but to no avail. I was probably visibly bummed, as my heelys, the things that made me hot shit, were now ineffective and basically ruined. The next morning, I was walking through the square on the way to meet my friends, and an older gentleman ran up to me, and stopped me. He had found my wheel. He said that he had seen me rolling around, and saw me looking for the wheel after I fell. He saw that I gave up, and stuck around for another hour to keep looking after I left. He came there the next morning with no expectation that I'd pass through, but wanted to be there just in case. I'm not sure who was happier, me that I got my wheel back or him, because he didn't think he'd see me in literally the world's busiest square. I said thank you and that was about it. We both had places to be, and that was that. I love this story. It reminds me of a time where I lost my iPhone 3 grams back in 2010 or 2009. 2008. The second-gen iPhone that was the first to have 3 grams, and among the first massively produced smartphones. I stupidly camped out for that stupid phone like an idiot. That next day, I went overseas on a government work trip to Taiwan. I lost my phone on my first night there. I retraced my steps but nothing. I resigned to the fact that I lost my brand new iPhone 3 grams. The next day, I was walking to the shipyard in the busy city of Keeling, port city of Taipei, and this guy runs out of a restaurant and flags me down. He motions to me to go to his cab. I said it's okay, I don't need a cab. He shakes his head, runs inside his cab, and gives me my phone back, along with a work pen that fell out of my pocket into his cab. I was absolutely shocked. I thanked him so much and he just smiled this biggest smile. I couldn't speak Mandarin nor Taiwanese, nor could he speak English. But body language is universal. He motioned me to join him for breakfast back at the restaurant he ran out of where he saw me stroll by. He ordered some super delicious Taiwanese-style noodles, and I ate them. He paid for the meal. I tried to compensate him for all his troubles. He refused. This old man worked double duty at that restaurant, and is a taxi driver, and you can see on his hands and face all the hard manual labor he did through the decades of his life. Oh, his wife worked at that restaurant too. I demanded that I know his phone number. For years after, my colleagues and I used him exclusively for our taxi rides around town. I'd post his number on our ship's quarterdeck, and label it taxi. Also, me and my colleagues would make the trip to eat at the restaurant, where they worked as much as we could. The restaurant closed down about 5 years ago, though I even called him to take me to and from the airport, which is comparatively a large fare over there. I didn't mind. He deserved it. I couldn't find him anymore when I went back a few years ago for vacation, 2016. I am hoping upon hope he finally retired to the countryside in a small home on the hillside, and living out his days in quiet with his wife. I found a rock formation that looked like a duck and balls in a cave in Vietnam. I laughed and pointed at it. Some Chinese tourists started doing the same thing, and then some Russian tourists followed suit. Great bonding because no matter what, phallic-shaped objects are funny. I was on a first date, and there was an old guy at the bar, looked like an old fisherman from a novel, and he was convinced my date and I were already married. He went on and on about it. We said we weren't married, and he told us we were meant to be together, and would be married a long time. He talked with us for a good 15 minutes about this. My date and I did get married about a year later, and have been together almost 25 years now. The day my dad died I was holding it together pretty well. Late that night I went to Target, to have a moment to just zone out, and buy a few groceries. As I got to the check stand with my arm full of stuff, I dropped a container of sour cream, and it exploded everywhere. I completely lost control of myself and started to cry. The ugly cry. I was instantly surrounded by a group of women who just took charge of the whole situation. They helped me get everything paid for, cleaned up, and one lady even got a new sour cream. No words were spoken, but their compassion and take charge attitude has stayed with me since. I'm a guy, and had this happen to me when my grandfather died, only real father figure. He was in VI assisted living, and then just got sick one day. We were expecting him to go back. I held it together at the hospital, then cleaned out his room, so another vet could get in ASAP. Then I stopped for food, and there's an older gentleman with his grandson, or great-grandson, and makes a comment my grandfather always used to say to me, and I just broke down. These two middle-aged ladies ushered me over to their seat, and I cried for longer than probably the rest of my life combined. When I was at Disneyland a few years ago, a woman approached me out of the blue in the middle of Main Street and asked if I'd like to dance. I obliged her, and we spent the next few minutes chatting, while her friends filmed us dancing. It turns out it was her birthday, and she was traversing the park on a birthday scavenger hunt, and one of the items on the list was to dance with a stranger. I wished her happy birthday, we said our goodbyes, and went our separate ways. I never even got her name, but it still makes me smile when I think about it. Mine was also at Disneyland, but significantly less sweet and wholesome. Standing in a notoriously long line for a particular ride, we noticed this girl wearing straight-up stilettos and a small knit dress in the middle of November who is becoming progressively more and more unsteady on her feet. Her boyfriend was also growing less interested in supporting her or keeping her warm, even mentioning how he suggested a different outfit for a theme park. It was only a matter of time. Sure enough, apparently while trying to lean on the rope railing, this girl absolutely eats it. Nobody laughed. She was fine. However, I immediately made eye contact with the guy who just uttered "oh my god" in the most hilarious way I've ever heard. I lost it and we shared something special for the rest of the wait time in that line. I will never forget him. I had about a 2-hour drive from Columbus to the Cleveland area. I tend to drive on the faster side, and therefore pass a lot of people. I noticed about 20 minutes into the drive that the car behind me was still the same one that got onto the highway right behind me. We ended up driving the entire 2 hours right next to each other, or in front of behind each other. We created space in lanes to help the other pass the slower cars, and made sure the other wouldn't fall behind. As I was getting off the highway, he honked his horn, gave me a big smile, and waved. It has been my favorite driving experience so far. I used to drive from Toledo to Dayton quite a bit, straight shot down 75. I would often leave closer to midnight, and always would find a rabbit, somebody driving over the speed limit that would take the police attention. The couple of times I found people that were riding along with me. We would share the burden of speeding, switching what car would be up front every 20 miles or so. Never knew any of them, but the shared understanding was very comforting. It was always sad when one of us took off on an exit, felt like I was leaving a friend behind. I'm pretty sure I told this before, but I enjoy it, so here it goes. I was playing on my Nintendo DS in the subway when I caught a random connection. I looked up to see if I could spot the other person with a DS, and wound up locking eyes with this incredibly intense little boy who was seated a few benches away from me. "Do you have Pokemon?" he asked, and as it turned out, I did in fact have Pokemon. With that, our fate was sealed. There's this thing in the Pokemon games where, if you meet the gaze of another trainer on your journey, then you must do battle. I had just experienced this in real life. He destroyed me. All level 100s. Felt like I was an extra in the dam and I'm doing battle with the protagonist. I was leaving the gym and walked down a long hallway, and didn't remember having any money on me. As soon as I stepped outside, I heard a coin drop, and looked down and $2 seemed to have fallen from somewhere on me. It was strange, because I didn't have any money on me, and it would have fallen off of me inside while walking, I thought. It rolls and I pick it up. I was confused, because I don't know where the $2 came from. I look up, and there's a homeless man in a wheelchair playing harmonica who I otherwise would have passed by. I gave the $2 to him. He said thank you, I said no problem. I began to walk away, and he said good, and you? I played along and said, oh, good. Where did you learn to play harmonica? He proceeded to tell me that he used to play all sorts of instruments until he had his stroke, and showed me that one of his arms didn't work anymore. He was a nice guy, and it made my day a bit better. It was a nice and humbling moment. I gave the $2 to him. He said thank you, I said no problem. I began to walk away, and he said good, and you? I played along and said, oh, good. Where did you learn to play harmonica? He proceeded to tell me that he used to play all sorts of instruments until he had his stroke, and showed me that one of his arms didn't work anymore. He was a nice guy, and it made my day a bit better. It was a nice and humbling moment. As everyone piled on and the bus drove away, a lovely middle-aged lady walked up from her seat near the back and politely asked if I minded if she sat with me. I told her she was more than welcome. She sits and proceeds to unpack a small lunch bag. She then split the entirety of her meal with me. She said she had been waiting for the washroom to clear out and had overheard what happened. She said, "I've gone hungry in my life and it sucks. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, so you can share with me." When we were done, I jokingly asked if she could break a $50 and we had a good laugh. She stuck with me for the remainder of the trip and was a very interesting lady besides being incredibly generous. I hope she is well. As everyone piled on and the bus drove away, a lovely middle-aged lady walked up from her seat near the back and politely asked if I minded if she sat with me. I told her she was more than welcome. She sits and proceeds to unpack a small lunch bag. She then split the entirety of her meal with me. She said she had been waiting for the washroom to clear out and had overheard what happened. She said, "I've gone hungry in my life and it sucks. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, so you can share with me." When we were done, I jokingly asked if she could break a $50 and we had a good laugh. She stuck with me for the remainder of the trip and was a very interesting lady besides being incredibly generous. I hope she is well. I was going to a university party with a friend, and there were a few people with cars there. My friend knew them, we all started chatting, and they offered a ride to a bar. The party was kind of weak, so we were like, sure, why not? The twist: inside the car I realized my friend thought I was the one who knew them. Yes, we were inside a car with a bunch of strangers who weren't even from the university, and I already had noticed those people were already near their 30s. After a moment of despair, and holding firmly to my organs, Brazil is a violent place, we arrive at the bar and end up having a pretty good time. Those people were really nice, and even paid some beers for us. Never saw them again. I met a well-dressed older gentleman at a train station in London. He struck up a conversation about the departures board, and being a 20 years old woman I was hesitant to talk back, but I like chatting to people, and decided to keep the convo going. He ended up being extremely easy to talk to. I ended up telling him I was waiting for a train to take me to the airport so I could see my boyfriend in Hong Kong whom I hadn't seen for months, and he ended up telling me all about his life and his amazing family, and just be all around charming. He was in London for the day to pick up a passport so he could whisk his wife away on holiday, and he just made me smile the way he was so smitten with her. He ended up leaving after about half an hour, and when he left, he took my hand and kissed it, telling me it's so beautiful to see a young woman in love. I never caught his name, but I'll always remember him. I was on an eastbound train from Colorado 2 days before Christmas. There was some kind of incident in another car around 11 o'clock that night. A dude got wasted and started threatening other passengers, and we had to make a stop so that the local police could come and collect him. After the delay, the conductor came over the speakers and announced that if anyone was feeling upset or shaken by the incident, one of the passengers had offered to play his guitar in the snack car, and anyone who was awake was welcome to come down and join in for a sing-along. I'm always down for weird train activities, so I decided to grab my harmonica from my bag and head down. There were about 15 of us in the car, ranging in age from 16 to mid-70s, and from all over the country. We sang every song we could think of that even kind of referenced a train. We were somewhere in rural Nebraska at that point, and nobody had cell service to look up lyrics, so at times I was pretty sure that we were making up more of the words than we actually remembered. The conductor came through after a while and offered to play a few songs, so the guy with the guitar handed it off and pulled out a mandolin, and my harmonica got passed around the group while one guy drummed along on his backpack. After a while the conductor got up and left, then came back with a copy of the Polar Express. He read it out loud to our absolutely captivated group of mostly adult travelers, while the snow flew all around us in the night, and I swear that for a few minutes our trip felt every bit as magical as the visit to Santa Claus in the story. Sometime well after the snack car was supposed to have been vacated for the night, we capped things off with the most ridiculously earnest rendition of Don't Stop Believing that has ever been performed and went our separate ways. I never saw anyone from our little makeshift band again, but I'll always remember that weird, wonderful late-night celebration of Journey, and the magic of winter travel that came about, because some guy was a jackass on a train. I was in an ice cream store with a few friends, and I made eye contact with some random guy walking to the counter. For some reason, neither of us broke eye contact, and for those few seconds he made an incredibly goofy face, to which I responded with another goofy face. For the rest of the time we were in there, him and I didn't even look at each other again. After the interaction, we didn't look at each other and make eye contact again. I did look at him a few times while he was waiting, and his back was turned, and it's possible he looked at me. I should have phrased that better. I was in the US Navy at the time, and we pulled into port in Norway. We had a couple days to explore, and I went to the closest city, Bergen. While in the main square area of town just down the road from their fish market, there was a small boy, maybe 3 years old, and his father. The boy had a large red balloon, but it was windy, and it got away from him. His father made a grab for it and missed, but obviously couldn't run after it and leave his kid. It was blowing generally in my direction, and I made a quick dash for it, and managed to catch it out of the air before it blew away. I then crouched down, and held it out for the boy. He looked like he was about to start crying, but immediately brightened up with the kind happiness only a child can have. He took the balloon, and his father just gave me a small smile and a nod. I returned the smile and nod, and we went on our way. This moment always sticks out to me. My little boy was 2 when they let go of one of his balloons, and it floated up to the sky. He was going to cry, but I suggested we sit down in our yard and watch it go up and see how far it got before we couldn't see it anymore. We watched it get further and further away until it was the tiniest little red dot in the sky. For the next few months, we'd talk about the balloon and how far it would have traveled by now. The moon, Mars, Jupiter, Pluto, the stars.